Hernandez. I am the Community School Resource Coordinator over at Sacajawea Elementary, but I'm also an employee of United Way of Treasure Valley. And so I'm actually really excited. I usually presentation times are like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you got to shrink everything and really make it super impactful. And so actually having this amount of time really got me thinking of what are some of the core things about our community school work at SAC I want to share with you all. So please, I ask at any time, go ahead and jump in, ask questions. If you want to, we'll have time at the end for discussion and kind of seeing, if you want to save your questions till the very end, that's completely fine. But let's make this fun. I hope the information that I have is useful to you all, and I'm excited to share it with you all, our community school journey. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll share my screen with you all. Okay. And so as I mentioned, so we actually have our Sacagawea Community School. It's located in Caldwell. We are part of the Caldwell School District. We are the very northern school of the Caldwell School District, up on Canyon Hill. And we've been doing this now for about 4 or 5 years. So the goals for today is kind of going in depth a little bit about the community school concept, what community schools are, the community school work, and what that looks like at Sacagawea, our COVID response, how that work prepared us when schools closures happened in March. And then just really briefly, how that preparation, our COVID response, kind of prepared us for our 2020-2021 school year, and kind of how that's made us restructure our work. But before I even begin, something that's very fundamental in our work is, as Simon Sinek says, is start with the why. And it's really something that we use to our core for every decision. And even from the very beginning of when this was starting to become a conversation topic for the district and United Way, is why. What's the why behind what we're doing? And it's what we want for our kids is what we want for our community. I was sharing with Roger that my kiddo is part of the Caldwell School District. And so my husband and I live in Caldwell. We are part of the Caldwell School District. And so we know firsthand all the great things that Caldwell has to offer. And we know firsthand that Caldwell is a great place for kids to grow up and to really thrive. And so the same opportunities that my children are able to access and benefit from, we hope to create systems that allow all of our children in the Caldwell School District and the city of Caldwell to also be able to access. So it does make my work a little bit more personal, and it does, I am a little bit more invested in it just because I know that peer relationship of my kiddos' peers. And so quickly, and Roger's going to kind of help me read out the answers. So quick question, go ahead and respond in the chat. How familiar are you with the community school model? So 1, you're very familiar. 2, you're familiar. 3, I've heard about it before. And 4, it's the first time hearing about it. So it looks like most of us have heard about it before or kind of familiar with it. So that's some of the stuff you've probably have heard before, and the neat thing is you'll see how some of the things that you've heard about community schools, you can see exactly how we've implemented that at Sacagawea. So the community school concept is nothing new. It actually started out in the East Coast, New York City, Harlem in the 90s, kind of really focusing on those high need communities. And so the concept, I like to describe it as, it's a strategy and a place. The place, of course, being the school, which for many communities, the school serves as the hub. It serves as the meeting place. It serves as a place where families trust. It's a source of trust. And for even Canyon Hill itself, it's our playground. It's where our children come and participate in an active lifestyle. And as a strategy, it's being able to identify barriers to our families, barriers between our families and their success. So really knowing what specifically what our families, what those barriers are, and then being able to strategically align and connect those barriers to community resources that are out, even directly, a block away or within our state, and being able to help connect those families to help them overcome those barriers. And so it's really about connecting and then bringing in, at most times, those resources directly into the school building. So one of the main concepts of community schools is this 4 pillars image right here that you have. And so the 4 pillars is really concentrated over integrated student supports, expanded and enriched learning time and opportunities, active family and community engagement, collaborative leadership and practices. And one of the things about the community school strategy is that it's very specific to the community it is serving. So in the state of Idaho currently, and Dawn, you're going to have to reach out to me so we can make sure that we're supporting you through, if we can help support you through United Way. But the state of Idaho currently here in the Treasure Valley, from Jerome to Horseshoe Bend, we have about 30 community schools. So the strategy in each one of those community schools is very specific to the needs of each school. The needs of Marsing will look very different to the needs of Sacagawea versus the needs of Whittier Elementary and Boise. So the strategy really fits in, comes in, and makes best of identifying those barriers and then being able to really build relationships with the best partners and resources to help families overcome. And so with the strategy in place, we really try to make sure that these 4 pillars are very well integrated within the community school strategy. And this is something that really makes the strategy, separates the strategy in a way from non-community schools. So I believe that every school in the state runs and does some part of this community school strategy. The only thing is sometimes they don't have an actual person that they're hiring, paying. Sometimes they're doing things here and there. But in order for a community school to be really identified as one, it's really integral to have these 4 pillars integrated into the system and into the school culture and climate. So one of the things about another key component of community schools is the defining stages of community schools, which is exploring, emerging, sustaining, maturing, and excelling. So exploring, of course, is those communities, those schools that are kind of starting to look into the strategy, kind of starting to dig around and talk about funding to see if this is something that they can start doing. Emerging is possibly even hiring that coordinator, or starting to put in place needs assessments and starting to identify what exactly is the community school strategy going to focus on. The sustaining is really already having some of those strategy practices already in place, and it's maturing. So you're starting to build some of those systems. You have a coordinator in place. You're starting to really be part of the school culture, the school climate, because the strategy isn't just the coordinator, isn't the person. It's really changing the systems and changing and being able to be embraced by the school and functioning entirely through the student to the staff, to the parents, to the community, and really functioning as a community school. And then excelling is really, you're working already on that systemic level of where things are happening without really planning. You have partners already in place. You already know your needs assessments, and you're working, and relationships already built. But the thing about this is, like in any place, in any job, anything really, if someone leaves or there's a hiccup or something, the strategies allow for the community school to shift, to move, to jump from one to another, to go back. So once you're at a stage, that doesn't mean you're going to stay there, or that you can't go back or you can't go forward. Sometimes those decisions have to be made, but this gives you an idea of the next step, and then if I fall back, where do I need to go from there? So now, specifically, our community school story actually started about 4 years ago, I would say. So this, as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually an employee of United Way of Treasure Valley. United Way received a grant through Trinity Health, which is the mother company of St. Alphonsus. And United Way reached out to the Caldwell School District, and the Caldwell School District worked alongside my principal and said, we're going to identify Sacagawea as our pilot community school, and so during that time, another key principle of the community school strategy was that principle buy-in. Having someone, especially the head of the school, fully invested and aware and informed of the strategy, I think really helped establish a solid foundation of where we have built the strategy at SAC. And so Mr. Webster is our principal at SAC. He actually did a lot of groundwork for me before actually I was hired on. So what he did was he did a parent survey. He did a class roster survey. He pulled attendance. At Sacagawea, we track not only just our daily average attendance, but we also track our mobility, how often are kids coming and going, and seeing how all of those things were really showing us trends and barriers to our families that were preventing them from being successful, not only in the classroom, but also outside in their normal day-to-day lives. And so when I came on board, they gave me a pile of data and said, you know what, we need you to help us narrow down our barrier, what we're going to focus on. It's been my least favorite part of my job. And so we were just like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And it did take me all summer. Even though we had all this really great information, I still continued to interview teachers. I interviewed parents. I rode around Canyon Hill and the surroundings to kind of get a better idea of what are they telling us that is their barriers, because I had already lived in Caldwell for a while, and I could have made my own assumptions, but my assumptions could have been far off of what our families were telling us. So this was a very crucial part in the way that we built our community school at SAC. So all of that work led to our priorities. And so these are our 5 priorities: health, from physical, mental, behavioral, vision, dental, to basic necessities, food, housing, clothing, to academic support, not just for our kiddos, but also for their families, transportation, and childcare. And so this really helps us focus our work, but also helps us to prevent from having to deal with every fire that comes through our door every single day. And so this guides our work. Some of these barriers have been easier to address than others. Some of them continuously change. I think that if we didn't have this, we'd probably be all over the place, kind of scattered. And so this really has shaped what we focus on. And so with those barriers in mind, we have focused on 2 aspects of the way we deal with those priorities. And the first one is connecting. And the example I'll give you is that, for example, at Sacagawea, we do not have a food pantry. Caldwell is filled with an abundance of food banks, food pantries, or community organizations that even now, because of COVID, deliver. So my job is to connect families and create an easier access to those resources. But for example, we have one of our fellow community schools that's in a rural community. They don't have a food bank, but their community school has the resources to maintain a food pantry and to run a food pantry and to just, to hand out food from their food pantry. That they come in and they are now that role. So again, the community school strategy is very specific to the needs of the school. So at SAC, we really try to focus to being the connectors versus the providing of giving a hand up versus a handout. And the second topic of our 5 priorities is being the leaders and being the example of having that overcoming mindset. versus a deficit mindset. And especially nowadays, we can really get bogged down with everything that's going on and how many struggles that even us as professionals in this role, even personally, we're having to deal with. But really being the leaders of setting the example of, we will overcome this. We were putting a system in place to help you overcome this. We will do this together. So it's really being intentional and purposeful of having that mindset. It looks like we had some questions come in. I can't see the chat. Roger, we can get to those questions now, or we can get to those questions at the end. What do you think?
Well, I can give it to you. Don asked, he said that they did a needs assessment of some of our at-risk families last year to see what the needs might be. And he said he'd like to expand that this year as they move forward. And so he's asking if you have a tool, an assessment you would be willing to share.
Yep, of course. So, Don, the best tool that I think out of all the surveys, even the family surveys that we've sent out, has been our class roster survey. And so what we do is we give each teacher their class roster with a list of not only physical needs or housing and all that stuff, but really social, emotional needs, mental health needs, and we have them rank their students from no, it's not a need, or it's not something that we're concerned about. We're concerned about it a bit, and then this is a big concern. Let's deal with this. And so they'll rank their students. And then those really high concerns, they'll leave us a comment. And then that really helps us start seeing trends throughout grade levels. And it also helps us track to see if anything has impacted grade levels from 2 years ago to this year. So I'll be more than happy to share that information with you in those templates. So now with the groundwork of understanding what the community school strategy is, kind of building what our focus was going to be. I'll be now sharing a little bit more about what the work looks like at Sacagawea, and how we have developed a strategy that is now part of our school climate, our school culture. And so the first thing is what we did the very first year that I came on board is we did a trunk or treat. And so one of the things, and I think this story I'm about to share with you really highlights the importance of why we decided to do this on a Saturday morning. And so I was actually our very first year. So by that time, I really didn't know many of the families or knew of a family came up. I couldn't click them to something. But school day was already over. I get a call from a family that says that they want to be part of the trunk or treat. Mom and dad work late, so they aren't really able to ever come to our school events. But because it's on a Saturday, they would like to come out and help give out candy. And so I was like, okay, didn't really know the family. And so I said, let me give you a call back. Mr. Webster was in a meeting down in our conference room. I walked down and I said, hey, Paul, such and such family wants to come out to trunk or treat. And he got this big old grin across his face. He's like, okay, that's perfectly fine. So I was okay. So Saturday morning, so trunk or treat is actually on a Saturday morning, the Saturday before Halloween. This year it would have been on Halloween. And so we're getting set up. We're starting our cars that are trunk volunteers are starting to set up. And all of a sudden I see 3 lowriders, coming towards the school, and just park as part of their trunks. And it was this family that had called. I had no idea that they were going to bring lowriders. But Paul did. And it was actually so much fun. Mom was so happy to have had an opportunity of not just being able to see her kiddos participate and be there and see them, but also be able to give back to the school. So our trunk or treat is really focused on meeting our families. So giving them something that is theirs. And so we build this around not just doing the candy, which is really, really hard coming from a grant that is through a hospital of saying, hey, it needs to be healthy. But really, so we did flu shots. Wonder Woman's getting her flu shot. We did earwax cleanings. Dracula's getting her earwax cleaned out. We give out free books. These past couple of years, we've incorporated STEM. Canyon County Juvenile Probation donates free bikes for our Spooky Skyhawk fun run. And so we really bring all these connections, all these resources together, and we do it every year. So not only do our families expect this, but our partners who invest so much time and resources to our families are also building relationships. And so we've had we've had our firefighters come out. And the best part of this all is just, it happens to, we've been lucky enough these past 3 years when we've done it. It's the perfect fall morning. And I think it's just luck, God's grace, whatever it may be, that we get that to be that like that on our Saturday morning. So this was really our kickoff to our families of, this is what your community school is going to do for you. It's going to bring you together. It's going to help meet needs. But at the same time, it's going to, not just, like I said, not just have that deficit mindset. This is going to be fun. Of course, we have an on-site behavioral mental health counselor in our building that really addresses the whole attendance problem, not even just the mental and behavioral health issue, but the attendance. We have kiddos that were leaving the building, not coming back for the rest of the day. So they're missing half the day, and it adds up. It adds up, and we start seeing that effect academically. We're glad that they're being, that their mental health is being addressed. But now having a mental and behavioral health counselor in the building really helps. But we knew that wasn't enough. So we worked collaboratively with their bosses, and we say, what's working, what's not working. Your paperwork's too long. Is there someone that can help our families fill this out? So it's just really seeing how we can better the system, and how do we really make sure that when our families are given a resource, that they can really actually utilize it. We partner with one of our local colleges here in the Treasure Valley of College of Western Idaho to provide English classes for parents. And this actually, when we first did this the first time, it served several purposes. Not only were we supporting our parents to kind of help them with their English, but we also provided childcare, which we knew was a barrier. And what that childcare actually did was gave an opportunity to a local church to get involved. And so we had a church on the hill that was always trying to figure out a way how they could help. And they really didn't know who to go to or who to talk to or how to do it. And so what we did was we offered them an opportunity to get them background checked through the school. And they were coming every Tuesday, Thursday on shifts and providing this childcare for us. And so that really gave them the opportunity to start investing back into their community and finding a way to get involved. We work with Delta Dental of Idaho to providing screenings, fluorides, and sealants. But one of the things, because of our work that we do with
Hortensia, before we move on from counseling discussion, Don Freiberger asked a question. He says, I've been reaching out to outside counselors to try and build this relationship and have met a barrier because providers are saying they can't bill Medicaid for services in schools.
Don, let me look into that, because I know that was a conversation that we had, but it is totally doable because we are doing it. So let me get you that information on how that works. And we're not the only school, and Life Counseling is not the only provider doing it. So let me reach out and see exactly what that looks like.
I think at some point it'd be interesting to talk about, some of the areas where there's somewhat less services or resources available. And, Rigby probably meets that criteria. It's a ways from Idaho Falls and, so on, where there might be more concentration of services and so on. But
yeah, no, and I think that's
the answer to that.
So we have, like, for example, Marsing and Notice, who are way in the outskirts of the cities. That's I think some of the biggest pushes of why they're wanting to do this, of co-located services. There you go. That's something Krista always uses. So it's really bringing in those services into the school. But let me get back on that information. I know we have it because it was actually something that started directly through the district. And because we had this, I believe because we had the strategy in place, it's just so much easier to get certain things going because we have a team to kind of tackle the problem and set it up and get it started. So I will make sure I get that for you, Don. With our work with Delta Dental that we do, Delta Dental has been super instrumental in being the example of, they were already serving our kids and families before the strategy came into place. We said, how can we do this better? What are we missing? And so they said, let's serve kids and families outside of school hours. let's not only tell them, hey, you need to go to the dentist, but let's give them a piece of paper that really makes the way they see their dental health as like, oh, I get this. So what they did one time for us was their dental report had the weather. So if they had a sunny, that meant they're good dental health. If they had, chance of rain, that meant, you need to start getting a look into, maybe start thinking about going to a dentist. And then if it was like a storm, okay, we have a problem right now. And what we realized was that we would tell them, oh, you need to go to the dentist, but what dentist do families go to? Who's their provider? Who accepts Medicaid? Who doesn't charge? Who has a sliding fee scale? Who takes Blue Cross of Idaho? So Delta Dental put a list together for us of sliding fee scale providers, Medicaid providers, private insurance providers, and we knew who to send families to. And through the work with Delta Dental, we were able to actually it allows for us to recruit grants. And so when they got their mobile unit, we said, okay, how are we going to power you? Of course, they have generators, but we said, we want to make this easier for you. And so through one of the grants that we received through St. Luke's, we were able to install a 220 outlet outside our building. So now whenever Delta Dental wants to come in and offer these services, they just park in our parking lot, they connect, and they start seeing families without them families having to even come into the building. We offer morning mindfulness every Tuesday, Thursday. And so this is an example of a community school partner that has worked with us in different ways, but actually is offering a unique and an unexpected resource to us. And this was really helpful. And when we say, kids go from 0 to 100 instantly, no, they come into our building at 60, 70. So it's recognizing that and then hopefully being able to help them scale back a bit to where about their 10 or 20, and they feel a little bit more better they feel a bit better to be able to learn for the day. Our community school work has allowed for us to really team up. So our attendance team is actually composed of Mr. Webster, our principal, our attendance clerk, our counselor, and myself. And we actually work on our attendance, not specifically, we don't say we do, but we're starting to shift on a tiered system. And so we meet once a week. We look at percentages of how many days present, the days possible, and we start seeing kiddos who are less than 10%. We start tracking them. And so on our tiered approach, we work on a school-wide level approach, which is tier 3. And so we're really pushing for everyone to come to school. We celebrate, a good attendance by all our classrooms. And then the tier 2 is we're starting to look at those kids that are starting to get to that above that 10%. And we're starting, okay, this is starting to become worrisome. And then that third tier is really starting to become, intense intervention, connecting families to partners and starting to come to the root cause of why are our kids not coming to school every day or on time every day. So our attendance team has really allowed for us to narrow down some of these bigger problems that are really out of the control of our kiddos, and it's a much bigger problem. Because of our attendance team, we started noticing that we had a lot of kids coming in tardy. And during one of our meetings, I shared this that had come up in one of my newsletters through community school. It's a project called Donut Miss School. And so we partnered up with the city of Caldwell. We were tracking kids for 2 weeks that we already had identified as severely tardy. And when I actually called families to invite their kids to participate, some of them had no idea their kids were tardy. And some of them, I had this one mom that accidentally got her husband in trouble because I told her, I'm like, yeah, he waits out in the car with the girls. I don't know if he's hearing the wrong bell, but they're coming in late every day. And so we came to find out the girls didn't like being outside during the winter, so they would bring them in. But I said, okay, so the first bell is when he brings them in, not the second one. And so we tracked them for 2 weeks. If we saw any sort of improvement, even 2 days of being on time, we celebrated that. And so we invited them to come into my office, my room, and have a donut. We had the mayor come once, we had a couple police officers come the next time, and it was just really celebrating those change in habits. Our community school actually partners with 2 churches on the Hill. And we do what's called the Canyon Hill Community Garden. And this actually has been a great place for our relationships with our churches to actually grow and come to fruition of really amazing results. So we work with Evergreen Heights Mennonite Church, Church of the Canyon Hill Church of the Nazarene, Church of Canyon Hill Church of the Nazarene are actually the ones that host our garden. But over the past couple years, we've been able to increase the amount of food that we get to families, kids and families, not just at Sacagawea, but Canyon Hill. And this year, we're over 400 pounds of fresh produce in the hands of Sac families, Canyon Hill families, and Caldwell families. We do STEM at SAC, so we revamped our computer lab to a STEM center. And these are things that are happening through the school, but the community school comes in and supports these initiatives and provides additional resources. The community school work at Sacagawea allows for us to coordinate and structure resources that our teachers need. We had a group of fifth graders that needed severe math intervention. We had a group of high schoolers that had a free hour because they were so caught up. We combined them together. We saw improvement in our fifth graders, but then we also saw an unexpected mentorship with our high schoolers of kiddos building relationships with kids that all had a distinct path after graduation. Our after-school programs, which is a key component of community schools, is something that is already put into place. And the community school model, it was already put into place before we started the community school model at SAC, but this allows for us to come in and support and to enhance already what's happening. The sensory hallway, so we just installed a sensory hallway at SAC this past summer. And this actually, our community school actually provided a voice to one of our parents whose kiddos had some high sensory needs. We had a community school partner that was in a meeting. She heard that mother, she heard that mother's plea. And a couple weeks later, they get a call saying, hey, we want to fund this project at SAC. And so now because of COVID, this is actually a really awesome break time for a lot of our kids during the building now that we're in a hybrid model. A book and a bite, something that actually started out through RISE, which is, we used to call it TVEP. But this was actually a summer literacy program where we really bring focus on literacy and STEM. And so this had happened 1 year before over at CUNA. Because of our community school and our relationships, we're able to replicate and work alongside RISE and put this at SAC. And so this past summer, we actually did a couple of weeks, really low key. We didn't really do much advertising, but it really gave kids a chance to come out, have some fun, get some free books, and win some cool prizes, but also at the same time, reaching a community that really benefits from STEM. So in order for all that work to happen, this is a group of amazing individuals who there's some that are missing, but these are community school stakeholders, and we meet every month, and we go over, the data that I shared with you before, what our families' needs are. We go over attendance, we go over reading scores, we go over all this information, we celebrate each other's wins, we collaborate, we discuss, and all these individuals have taken ownership in this community school strategy at SAC, and they have invested themselves. And so I think the biggest thing about it is we've given each one a platform to where their mission aligns with our school's mission and our community school's mission, and it makes our work much more powerful. One of the things too in our stakeholders is we have parents involved. And it's important for us with parents involved in our stakeholders group, it's nothing about them without them. And so we need them to use their voice to tell us exactly what's happening. How can we best help you? And so this group is ranged from church, city members, from City Hall, to school staff, our instructional coach, our principal, a really wide range of members that really make the work at Sacagawea possible. This is one of our teacher testimonials, and I'll try to speed it up a little bit because I know I've been doing a lot of storytelling, but I truly believe that if there wasn't the support at Sacagawea, the burden of taking my children into my care but not being able to meet their needs would be too much to bear. And I think having what we have in place is really the support system that our teachers need. Oh. Okay, so Sacagawea is actually part of the Idaho Coalition for Community Schools. It's an initiative that was put together by the State Department of Education, Jill Matthews, and Krista Rowland from United Way of Treasure Valley. And in one of our meetings, as COVID was happening, March, Krista said, community schools were built for this. And as more and more of the work that we do and that we're in the building every day and the way that we respond to things, it's more and more true. We were really built to deal with that crisis moment. And so when I say we have that principal buy-in at Sacagawea, we literally have that principal buy-in. So Mr. Webster and the many, many things that he reads, he presented to me. We meet every week. We have notes from every week that we meet. And so during spring break, we were meeting every day. How are we going to capture what our families' needs were? How were we going to capture families that were just coming into crisis? Because we knew that before COVID happened, we had families already in crisis that we were dealing with, but COVID caused a wave of additional families. And so we wanted to be able to make sure we captured that. So what we created was a family check-in. It was a Google Doc. We put questions in, some questions that we're really trying to get to know exactly how they were doing. So, we're not okay. This is really hard for us. Or, you know what, my kiddo just needs an email from their teacher or a phone call. We're doing okay, but things might change. So we sent this out. We got about 150 responses. We distributed this out to teachers, to staff. We worked closely with our counselor, and we were kind of being able to start seeing trends of what were some of these, some of the bigger problems that were starting to become problems because of COVID. And as we sent that out, we were starting to put in place resources, and we were starting to gather all this information. But we knew that once we sent that out, things were going to continue to change for families. That wasn't just the only thing that we needed to know at that time. So what we did was we put a teacher resource request, because we were expecting our staff, our teachers, to be in constant communication with our families. So as the situation changed, as a crisis came up, teachers were able to fill us in. And usually this was something that my principal, our counselor, and myself were able to work together and help address. But oftentimes I didn't know some of those things were happening, neither did my principal, or, this information wasn't coming across our desk, because we put together a community school resource page that gave our parents, not only our staff, but our parents, the opportunity to become self-sufficient, to know exactly where to go, what information they needed. The thing about our site wasn't that it would take you to another website that you'd have to look through the website to find the information that you needed. No, it was that direct information of, this is exactly, if you need, Florina's information about how to request, diapers and formula and this is the exact information that you needed to find. And so we had our teachers, we had everyone in the building know where this was. We had our families know where this was. So we could all kind of be a part of being able to be self-sufficient to find this information. So doing all that work and doing all the work prior to that really kind of helped prepare us for this new school year. And so I show you this illustration. I don't know if some of you have seen it before, but it's something that we use oftentimes with our community school presentations. But it's a kiddo coming into school with all this baggage of saying, could someone help me with these? I'm late for math class. And especially more than ever this school year, there's additional baggage. There's the baggage of COVID, of fear, of uncertainty. Never in my work have I seen the intersection of housing and education so strongly as this year. I've always known that families, there was the instability of housing, but even housing now where families cannot help with schoolwork because they have to work 2 jobs in order to keep a roof over their head. And that had not been the case before. And now that is the case. Now that is the case why we see so many of our kids struggling. But again, that overcoming mindset, we have to be the example. And so being able to tell our staff, every kiddo in the building has a face mask because of this partnership we have with the local church. Don't worry about school supplies because all our community school partners are running school supplies drives with you for you guys. Or, you can't go to the pumpkin patch, but we have this community partner that's willing to donate all these pumpkins. So really starting to build those relationships and those resources and those connections to where we've already done all that and continue to do it. We don't get to do trunk or treat this year, but we're focusing on some other areas. I never thought I'd be a guru of internet connectivity, but now I know all the providers that serve the area of Caldwell and Canyon Hill and know their prices and who to call and their phone numbers. But that's what COVID has led us to. But our families and our staff, knowing that they have a support system built into their school culture, I think allows for them to come into the school setting a little bit more at ease. I can't say that everything that we've done has made life 100 times better for families, or there's no more problems, but there's something in place to be able to help address those barriers. So I have to thank our staff. I have to thank our partners, our parents, our children, everyone that's been a part of our community school strategy that has allowed for it to become so successful. We've had things where we've had to go back to the drawing board. We've had things that worked out the first time and others that didn't. But our community school is really the work of so many individuals that have had said yes and have yes in their heart. So if you have any questions or you want to discuss anything, I'm more than happy to take questions. I thought it was going to be way less, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm honestly glad that I got to share so much with you all, because sometimes I was telling Roger, I hear presentations and I'm just thinking, well, one, how'd you pay for that? Or how are you doing that? Or, how is this possible here? And hopefully I was able to kind of give you a little bit of background on how some of this stuff is happening at SAC, and not overwhelm you with like, gosh, how am I going to make this happen? So here's my contact information as well as Mr. Webster's, and then also added Krista Rowland's contact information. She's kind of helped support and advocates for community schools throughout the Treasure Valley. And I'm sure we could connect you, Don, with someone in Eastern Idaho, correct? And so, if you need any information, go ahead and feel free to reach out to us. All right, Roger, I'm all done.
And I can either get questions in the chat, or we can, feel free to open your mic up and ask a question or make a comment.
I have a question. I was just wondering, I know you guys were having trouble with internet access, right? Like getting that to all the families. Have you guys figured something out?
Yes and no. I mean, I had something in place. I mean, the first thing that we tried to do was set up a homework hour at the church at Kenny Hill Naz. But then that has the barrier of transportation, time, only one day. We were only gonna be able to do it one day out of the week. So we knew that, with all really great intentions, it probably wasn't going to be the best solution. So we wanted to redirect our resources. We had some possibilities for hotspots, but the problem becomes is we can't offer it to everyone. So then we have to go to the next solution. And one of the next solutions is the Strong Kids, Strong Family grants that will be coming out later this month. So maybe here in a couple weeks, I'll be a grant writer for a lot of our families. But the nice thing is that over the past 2 months or so, or the month or so, we've kind of identified what families really don't have the resources to pay for internet or don't have the means to get a hotspot. And so it's a short list, but it's a list of really high needed kids. I will stop sharing my screen so I can see. I think there are some questions in the chat, right?
No.
No.
Not a new one.
Okay.
There's a couple of the questions I already asked. So, what is the contribution of the Caldwell School District, and are they looking at, operating this long term, or do you have a sense of that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the points I did miss. So now, actually, we are starting to switch over to a blended model, which a lot of community schools around the nation function under. And so for the 2020-21 school year, for the new school year, there will be an investment from the Caldwell School District, several community partners, and continuous support through United Way. So it will be a blended funding model, from different community partners in the district. So, but our long-term goal is actually to set up a foundation, and to be able to use our foundation as that source to fund not only just Sacagawea, but to also help expand in the Caldwell School District.
So to other elementary schools, or at least to elementary schools initially. Cool.
Yeah.
Paula Perry, you're open. Mike, I don't know if you wanted to say something. You're unmuted. maybe not. Don, did you get all your questions answered? No, there you go.
Well, I was just going to say, Hortensia, you're so articulate and great about explaining what the community school is and what it means. My only regret is that, I wish you lived closer over here in Southeast Idaho, because we need some advocates like you. And thank you for your time in doing this today. And I need to figure out who to reach out to for the United Way in our area, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you want to actually put your contact information, that way I can actually help answer the other question in there as well.
Sure.
I'm actually really excited to know that this is really starting to expand and really expand all over the state. So,
yeah, my first exposure to this concept was really about a year ago this time, and we've made great progress, over that year. COVID had set us back a little bit, honestly, but last January or February, we hosted a meeting with community service providers, and I bet we had 40 people present from various community service providers around our area, some Idaho Falls, some Rexburg, a few right here in Rigby. But, I used to think that it would take a lot of money to be able to do something like this. But the more I've gotten into it, I think it certainly takes some money. But a lot of it is just the goodness of people and service providers who want to help. And I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, I think that was when I first came on board, I was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? And in reality, there's a lot of points of, the return on investment, to that coordinator position, right? What the social return is for that. And you saw a little snapshot of the work that's being invested at SAC, and that, I think that's what really captures what the strategy is. It's just how much is not just time, but individual resources and all these donations. But yeah, once I got a grasp of it, I was like, okay, this is completely doable.
I know that, I read this book years ago, which is the book on the Harlem Children's Zone. And, I thought, God, this is what we need to do. And I feel like, but you know what? This cost bazillions of dollars. I mean, what he did, really cost, but he got Wall Street behind it, got people to put all kinds of money. Now their situation may be more acute, and so we'll give credit to that. But I think the other piece is that, I think what you were talking about, Hortensia, about not necessarily making all the resources internal, but to figure out what resources exist outside that you could bring into the school, so that people who are already paying for things like Family Advocates doing some of the work it does, or with Diverse, or and with with family groups, and some of the work that Terry Riley and others, there's people already paying for things. How do we organize those resources? So I'd be interested in hearing your comments on that, too, in terms of how that how that occurs, or what the what maybe you still lack too, in terms of having to do yourselves.
Yeah. So first, I think it's okay to say no, and in both ways. And I think sometimes that was one of our very initial fears of I think we're all super excited to jump in on this opportunity and do something, but sometimes it's not the best time or the best fit. And so there has been times where we've had to say, this is not something we can take on. And the food bank thing, Paul and I went back and forth on it for a while, and we were at a presentation one time and we said it, and the Idaho Food Bank was there and we hadn't told them yet. So it was kind of awkward. I was saying, you know what, we're not going to do a food pantry. And the other thing is kind of knowing when's the best time to bring in those resources. And one of the things that we learned was, we did a resource fair kind of night during a parent-teacher conference, because we're already having a lot of our families come into the building during that time. And it was great. We had a lot of families getting their dental screenings and we knew that they were accessing all these resources at a time that worked for them and at a place that was there. But then on the other side of the coin, we found out that they were getting late to their conferences, so teachers weren't happy. And so then we had to take that into consideration. How do we build this system of, meeting families halfway, where not only are they success, that way they're still meeting their academic needs of going to their kids' conference, but at the same time, they're getting their dental health screenings and they're doing all these other things. But when it's things that are outside of the school building, I think one of the things too is advocating for things that work for our families, which has been, I think the biggest example is food banks of having, and I understand it's based on volunteers. So if your volunteers are only available during the day, then that's when you can open. But in reality of knowing what pantries are open in the evenings, especially for our farm working families, or, because of COVID, knowing what resources deliver, family advocates delivers, but now Whitecap is starting to deliver. So it's along, the beginning, one of the starting things that we did was doing a resource inventory of not just what was already coming into the building, but what resources were out in the organization and which were going to be the best to help meet some of those, meet our 5 barriers. And so kind of really having the best background knowledge of everything that's happening in the community.
Hey, Carrie. So Carrie works for United Way of North Idaho, and I wonder if you have any thoughts about, what the role of, I know Don's asking, and of course you're even a longer way away from him, but, if you have any insights into how United Ways might approach something like this. I know this, so.
Yeah, thanks for asking. And I really have enjoyed this presentation, Hortensia, because it's given me some tangible examples of what community schools can do. And we have some schools in our area that are somewhere along that continuum already, and not calling it community schools, but sort of like resources, family resources. So I'm excited for this. And we also have a couple of our VISTA members working on a similar project here to try and lay the groundwork for community schools. So again, thank you for, of course, all of the work that you've done in collaborations, but also taking time to present to us and help us understand. A couple of the things that came to mind for me for questions was, have there been, you kind of touched on it a little earlier, or in an earlier question, of maybe resources or programs that have come in or have been invited in that then turned out to not be a good fit, or if there was maybe examples of things that became too big or too much for the capacity. I think that's something that we always think about because we need to pay people. So we're always thinking about capacity. So that was one of my questions. And then my second question is around if you have had experience or, among the Community Schools Coalition of hosting parenting, like parent education classes at schools. And what that may look like. And so you had mentioned specifically around the English learning workshops with childcare. And I love that. We've been talking more specifically around like strengthening families types workshops. So whether it's a circle of security or even something like how to help your 5th grader with math homework, so things like that. So those are my 2 questions: capacity and then parenting classes.
So the capacity one, luckily we haven't have one that's like so overflown we haven't been able to manage it. I think we've been pretty good at being able to manage it. But we did have one that, and I think because of having the role at SAC makes it easier for agencies, organizations outside to much get quicker responses and have someone they can directly talk to that doesn't have to also be teaching or counseling or being the principal and doing all these other things. And so that's their sole job. And so I think that's something that has attracted some of these things that are not Sacagawea specific, but Caldwell and Caldwell School District specific, a range. And so we did a program where it was a kind of like a banking on program. And it was hard to get families registered. We knew all this data behind it. We knew, that kids that have a savings account at a young age are more likely to go off onto college. So we had all this stuff to show parents, but it was still so hard to get families registered and to come and to buy in. So that was on a Saturday morning, and having to come and open the building and doing all these things. It was hard, and when we looked to do it again, we said, what could we do better, or is it really something that we should put the time into doing? So we had to take a step back and say, let's maybe put you in a more central location, because since we are the most northern school, we kind of are isolated from a lot of other families, a lot of other schools or resources, and you have to go up a hill, so it's not very walking friendly. Caldwell doesn't have active transportation that's ran through the city. So that was something that we had to take and I love our partners that on, but it was like, okay, this really didn't work, and I don't want you to waste your resources on something that's not working. So let's re-strategize this. And then for the second question, we have done, so through our mental behavioral health counselor that's on site, we've done some family strengthening classes. So we've done them for the past 2 years. We do workshops, one for 2 weeks. So one Tuesday or one Thursday, we do them late in the evenings. We provide dinner, but it is hard. It is super hard to get families to come. And I think it's just that, just that stigma around mental health. And, we the last one that we did, we titled it Positive Parenting. It was no negative connotation to it. We were truly, the childcare, we provided dinner, and we had a handful of parents come, and the ones that did come, they found it super beneficial. Would it have been the families that we really wanted to come? No. But it was, it was there. So we had to go look at that and figure out, why that didn't work, or what's really the root cause behind this. And so, partners are out there, and both times that we've done them have been at no cost for us. We look into our family engagement budgets for paying for dinner, and then we get the high schoolers to come out and provide volunteer services for childcare. And I'm the adult supervisor, so sometimes I work outside of, in the evenings or weekends. But knowing that the structure is there, is just now knowing, how do we get families here? That's the challenge.
So we have hit that magic time line, whatever time it is, wherever you are. And so we need to quit, even though this is super great. I will add one thing. You have to go with the Roger Sherman plan for making parenting classes cool, which I have not figured out yet. But this being a problem everywhere, you are not alone. and I think we just somehow we have to make that more normative. It's like why doesn't everybody want to go to parenting classes rather than seeing it as a punishment? So yeah, it's a struggle, and I and I think it's something we do need to overcome, because there's so much, none of us know everything, and it would be great if people, no matter how good your experience was or whatever, what we know about brain development, most of our parents knew nothing about, because there wasn't even a way to know it. So anyway, Hortensia, thank you so much for doing this. I will send out the link to the videos, to the whole group, I guess, that was on here. Maybe I'll send it to everybody, who we invite regularly, and we'll be in touch soon with another new web workshop. And Hortensia, thank you again for for doing this for the group. There's so much information here, and it's such an important thing, and such a great opportunity, I think, for really, I say, break down the walls of the school and make it more of a community resource, and vice versa. So really appreciate you and what you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.